Hi guys! 2015 is well underway and I've already read 3 books, which is fab, and I thought I would take this opportunity to talk a little bit about what my reading goals are for 2015. Now, I'm not usually a massive goal setter. For every year I've been on BookTube, I've set my Goodreads reading challenge to 60 books, which averages at about 5 books a month. In 2013 I managed to read 73, which was insane, but in the last year, 2014, I only managed to read 58, which is slightly irritating that I missed 60 by only 2 books, but I can deal with that. It's not a rigorous or like strict goal for me. It's just a nice number to have on Goodreads so I can see where I'm at. I did, however, read far more pages according to Goodreads in 2014 than I did in 2013, so it doesn't really mean that I was reading less. Unlike previous years, however, this year I was inspired to set myself a few more goals for the year. I've seen a lot of little sort of bingo charts popping up across the internet for reading challenges, and I decided to make my own little personal one because as fun as it is to follow other people's, I really just wanted to design a little bingo tick chart that really fitted in with what I personally wanted to read and would read in this year. So I'll put a little picture of the bingo board here so you can see what it is, but I'll quickly tell you the goals and I guess why I've set them. First is read a book by Margaret Atwood. Now, I've read a few books by Margaret Atwood and she's one of my all-time favourite authors, but I didn't read any books by her last year, so I don't want to leave another year gone by in which I don't read a book by Margaret Atwood, so I am going to read a new book by her this year. Notice that some of these are incredibly easy and I don't think I would even have to try to make these happen. So the next one is read a YA book. As you know, it's not the genre that I predominantly read from, but I do enjoy a good YA book now and then, so I think I may as well put that on my charts. There's another author and it's read a book by John Wyndham. Again, another of my favourite authors, and I would just really like to make my way through his collection. Hopefully I'll read more than one of his books this year, but to at least read one would make me happy. Next is read a children's book. Now, I don't think I read enough children's literature. Especially recently, I've noticed a lot of booktubers talking about children's and middle grade fiction, and they've really inspired me to check out some more. So this year, read a children's book is top of my list. Next is an author I've never read a book by, and it's read a book by Stephen King. Just wanted to read a book by Stephen King for the longest time, and I'd like to take this opportunity, so I thought I'd put it on my bingo board. I don't actually have a specific book by Stephen King that I want to start with. I have no idea where to start, so if you're a Stephen King fan and can recommend a book to me, then please do in the comments. Next is read a play by Aristophanes. Now, I've only read one play by Aristophanes. It's really difficult to form an opinion on his writing or his comedy, I feel, without having read more, so to read another one of his plays. Next is read a book from the Canongate Myth series. The Canongate Myth series includes one of my all-time favourite books, The Penelope by Margaret Atwood, and I was hoping to read Ali Smith's Girl Meets Boy this year, but just I ended up having a super busy month during the classical literature read along and didn't manage to read that one. So I really want to read at least one book from the Canongate Myth series this year, especially since I own a couple of them and haven't read them. Next is read a book by Emma Donoghue, another author that I discovered in 2013 and really enjoyed. I read 2 of her books, but I didn't manage to read any last year. I would really like to make sure I do in 2015. Next is read a book I owned pre-BookTube. I've got a small pile of books on my bookshelves that are books I've received as gifts or picked up on a whim prior to BookTube and still haven't read, which means some of them have been there for more than 2 years, so I'd really like to get to at least one of them this year. Next is read a sequel. There are a few series that I am sort of in the middle of, not a crazy amount for certain. I'm not like a massive series reader, but I would like to make sure I keep on going with some series, and I don't have a specific series in mind, but I definitely want to make sure that I tick the read a sequel box. Next is read a book starring a dragon, and as you all know, I just love dragons and fantasy fiction starring dragons, so I would just like to be introduced to a new dragon world this year. Next is read a collection of short stories. Again, just a genre I really enjoy and would like to read more of this year. Next is read a play by Sophocles. Now, he was a tragic playwright from ancient Greece. I've only read 2 of his plays and I really enjoyed them, and now that I've read a bit more Aeschylus and I've read more Euripides, I just feel like I need to read more Sophocles, so I would really like to especially read Antigone this year. Next is read a piece of modern translated fiction. Obviously I read a lot of fiction translated from Latin and ancient Greek, but I don't think I read enough fiction translated into English from other modern languages, so I'd really like to do that this year. Next is read a book for research. This is pretty straightforward. I would just like to read a book that hasn't been set for university and isn't necessarily for an essay, but is for some piece of research that I'm interested as like an individual. It can be for my dissertation, it can be for a paper I want to write just on my own time. Next is one that I think is going to be very easy and I'm going to do very soon, and that's read a book by H.G. Wells. I own 2 of his books and I'm actually halfway through reading one of his books at the moment, which is The Invisible Man, and basically if I finish that this year, which I think I will, then I will have completed that goal. But he's just another author that I'm really intrigued by and really want to get into. Next is an author I haven't read, and it's read a book by Haruki Murakami, and I've been meaning to read a book by him for the longest time, and I own Norwegian Wood, so I'm probably going to start with that one. Next is read a non-fiction book. Now I do find that despite reading a lot of articles and a lot of chapters in books and bits of books, I don't tend to read enough non-fiction cover to cover. So that's something I really want to improve on this year, and I want to read a lot more than one non-fiction book cover to cover, but just to have at least one on my bingo chart means I can tick it off. Next is read a book by Jane Austen, which I've never done, and I know that I just feel silly at this point in my life. Next is read a classic, and I don't mean a piece of classical literature because that's a given. I will read a lot of classical literature, but I just mean a classic in the typical sense, something written from like the 1800s. Next is read a book over 500 pages. I would say on average the books I read are usually from like 200 to 400 pages, so I would like to read something quite chunky this year. Next is read a book by Shirley Jackson, another author I discovered and loved again in 2013. I think I discovered quite a few authors in 2013 that I really fell in love with. But in 2014 I just didn't manage to read any more of her books. I read her collection of short stories, but none of her novels, so I'd really like to do that. Almost done. Next is read a piece of medieval literature. I just think this is a time period of literature in which I'm really not that well versed, and I would really like to just experience it a little more, because I do think, other than that, I have got quite a wide breadth of reading experience. Next is read a book by Ovid, which is a Latin poet, and you've probably all heard of him. I discovered him in 2014 and fell in love with him, and I really just want to have read all of his work. And last but not least is read a book sent to me for review. Again, something I have no doubt I will do. I will do more than one of, but it's just nice to have little things on your bingo chart that aren't that difficult to tick off. Obviously, you can tell that these goals are very much designed to fit in with what I would read and hope to read. I'm not setting myself any goals that I'm not interested in accomplishing. If you do have any books that would fit into these categories that you think I'd enjoy, please do leave them in the comments below. Of course, feel free to use this bingo chart if you'd like. I know it's very personalised to me, but if it takes your fancy, then go ahead, and I'll see you all again very soon. Bye guys!